Yet another update to the Mavic 3. The Mavic 3 Pro now has 3 lenses on this thing. The micro 4/3 regular camera, a 3x telephoto 3/4 inch sensor, and a 7x telephoto 1/2 inch sensor. So that's the equivalent of a 24mm lens, a 77mm lens, and then a 166mm lens. In the Cine version of this drone, all 3 of these can record in Apple ProRes. The other 2 cameras now also support 4K 60 frames a second. Here's the upgrades on paper and what's different from before that we actually care about. Behind the scenes, the telephoto lens has a higher aperture, so it is brighter, 4.4 to 3.4. In my experience, in general, it is higher quality and it's better than the Mavic 3's second camera when it was launched and had a faded, funny looking image before updates. And the specs are really similar to the side-by-side I had on the Mavic 3 Classic video. The core components, the things you really care about on this drone, the reason you buy a Mavic 3, none of that has changed. None of the important stuff has changed, same batteries. That firmware camera combo in this drone thankfully has not been tampered with at all. That is what makes anything you film with this thing look like it's a painting. The exposure balancing is phenomenal in this drone. Why am I celebrating this like it's this brand new thing? This is not a Mavic 4. This is a Mavic 3 like definitive edition that has everything together. For the person who just came along and decided to buy this thing, you now have lots of different buying options. You have a 1 camera drone, a 2 camera drone, or a 3 camera drone. You got Cine versions of this that have the nicer controller or the normal controller. It's a great time to buy this thing when all the hiccups are out of the way. Not everybody is going to care about that second or third lens, but when you can get shots like this, it is a really fun, really cool feature to have on there. And honestly, the thumbnails I get that I like the most are always from the zoom lens because you get the most cinematic angles. It's still awesome to have, and I have gotten nice shots that I wound up using. The 7x lens can stretch to a 28x zoom. However, that is a digital zoom at that point. It's just taking the 7x's 4K and then blowing it up. So you do lose quality very quickly and it's noticeable. Fun to have though. I mean, why not do it while we're here? And this is how far it was to start with, so it's a pretty far way away. Even if they repackaged the Mavic 3, pretended it didn't happen, and then just sold it like it was this new thing, I would delightfully pump it because I can't explain to you how satisfying it is seeing harsh, ugly sunset lighting and then throwing this drone at it and it just blows it out the park and it's a cakewalk for it. And looking at the picture afterwards, and it just does such a good job in any situation. The craziest lighting extremes does better than I anticipated. It comes out looking like a painting. It is so satisfying, and once you have that, it's so hard to go back from it. They did a great job with this auto HDR, exposure balancing, whatever it is going on, this perfect formula they found. If you come from a smaller drone with a smaller sensor, once you get a taste of that, you will only want to be filming with that kind of power. Side note, if we can fit a micro 4/3, a 3/4 inch sensor, and then a 1/2 inch sensor on this big bulky camera head, I'm pretty sure at this point we can like get a full frame sensor on this thing working. I saw that there's a full frame sensor on the Inspire 3. I saw one at NAB where this poor man had to stand there and fly up and down for like 8 hours a day straight. But I saw one. Typically the technology seems to trickle down where it starts with the Inspires and then they move it down onto a smaller body like the Mavic 3s. Hopefully we eventually get that full frame on a Mavic 4 maybe, I don't know. Probably won't be for a while though because the Inspire 3 just came out. Back to this 3 lens camera though. I wanted to say this was like the upgrade nobody really was like pining for or even saw coming, but I guess there are people asking for it because if you work in utility and you got to bang up a radio tower 5 miles in the air just to check if you left the oven on, you're really going to be grateful to have those extra zoom options on a Mavic 3 where you can just go up there and check. It is handy to be able to use this for something like search and rescue, and not everybody is just doing it for strictly maximum quality, so I have to keep that in mind. There is a lot of usefulness having that many zoom options. And to be fair, if you just did a digital zoom and you scaled up your 5.1K footage, it would look like this versus this kind of quality that you get with having the zoom option. And then the same thing translates here using the 7x as well. So anything is better than doing just a digital scale in the editor. So just to be able to get a 7x and get it working smooth is a feat in itself. How does this compare to the Mavic 3's telephoto lens? The Mavic 3 also had a 7x zoom, about the same focal length. Both of these shots are shot in H.265 with no ND filters on. For one, there's richer details on the Mavic 3 Pro. Here the building has more presence in the foreground, and here you can see the lack of details if I go back and forth. This was a really ugly day to do this, by the way. It's super gloomy outside, but the Mavic 3 Pro also needed a shutter of 400. The Mavic 3 was at 240. That's because the Mavic 3 Pro's 7x camera is f3.4 versus 4.4 on the old one, so the new one is also going to be better in low light. This is at that 28x zoom that's digital, so it will look bad no matter what on both of these, but if it gives you any more of an idea, this is what you're working with. There are lots of buying options with this Mavic 3 Pro as well. The Mavic 3 Pro with the DJI RC and some extra batteries and knickknacks, the Mavic 3 Pro with the super duper VIP version of the smart controller, and a fourth one, a Cine version. The Cine version has a 1TB internal SSD to store your footage. It shoots in ProRes, it has the option in there, and it comes with this big juicy super version of the DJI smart controller. The smart remote it's more heavy duty, it feels a lot more serious and less plasticky. Not saying the other one's bad by any means, it's just that this screen's a little bit bigger, a little bit brighter. You can also install Firefox on here, so like how neat is that if you gotta go type an email. I'm sick of talking about this thing because I've said 15 bajillion times how important it is to have a smart controller to remove the third variable, your phone. You don't have to worry about brightness or your mom calling you or your wife calling you. You don't have to like unlock it, turn it sideways. You just turn on the drone, turn on the controller, and you fly away. It's put all the fun back into flying a drone. And so many shots I would normally avoid because of the pain of having to put it in the little cradle, I can do it much faster. If the sun is setting and you have 2 minutes, that's plenty of time with this combo, the controller and the drone. Can't overstate enough. Get one of those. You will be so happy you did. This time, they've got 4 different options. But back to that Cine version. You have to have an internal SSD to shoot ProRes. The files are huge. The data is huge. You need to have something inside the drone that can handle that. Like on my Mavic 3, I can't switch to the SD card if I want to shoot in ProRes. It has to be on the internal 1TB. But part of that price increase is because ProRes licensing. Apple is a company whose #1 job is to get as much money out of you as possible. When I had the Inspire 2, I had to pay $1,400. I mean, $900 of that was ProRes, and then $400 of it was for like being able to shoot in a RAW format. The drone has the ability to shoot it. I'm paying for permission to be able to press that button to turn it on. So yeah, that kind of sucks, but that's priced into this Mavic 3 Cine package, so that's also a reason why it's more expensive. ProRes is a big benefit. It's not a deal breaker. If you have to ask what it is, you're not the person who needs it, no offense. If you're a video editor or a camera operator and you use big projects with tons of files and editing, you will notice a difference using ProRes files because they're easier to work with. There's a little bit more quality increase. The files are giant, so that's annoying, but it's easier to edit with. H.265, what most drones are using and cell phones these days are using, it retains all the quality, but it's very compressed. So imagine taking all your closet, squeezing it into a suitcase, but then you need your lucky underwear. What do? You got to shuffle around in the dark for 15 years. Every time your computer jumps between footage, it has to uncompress it to figure out what's going on. You notice it on a huge editing timeline. Little projects, not so much. ProRes is just walking into your closet and immediately knowing where something is. It takes more room, but it's easier on your computer in the end. Don't stress if you're not the person for it. It's not a big deal. And the quality change is minuscule, so it's not like you can tell if something was shot H.265 versus ProRes unless they were side by side and you could like zoom in. But also consider this, in cameraman world, what we would always do is you film, give the card over to copy footage off, and then keep filming. But with the Mavic 3, having an internal hard drive means you have to plug the whole drone in and wait while it copies over. Transfer speeds are fast, so it's okay, but it is kind of annoying to not be able to do that. If it's very important to you, all these Mavic 3s have an SD card slot anyways, so that you can just use that. But to shoot ProRes, you do have to use only that internal. At this point though, when you're talking about $40, if it's a space thing that you're worried about, this isn't even an issue anymore. You can get a 1TB SSD of even half the size. You'll never fill it up. I mean, that's tons of room. These are very easy to come by, so it's not really an issue in 2023. Back to the spec page. There's things in here I really just don't care about. Range always gets talked about. I don't need the drone to fly 800 miles. The connection at this point is so like they could change something, have a major update, and I wouldn't notice because everywhere I'm trying to fly has been without a hiccup, just flawless. Within a mile, I'm happy. I don't need to fly drugs to a prison 10 miles away. So to me, I don't really care, and I've been happy with it. Battery life, I notice I'm in less of a hurry when I land after filming and I've got like 65% left. It's nice. It's a cool luxury to have. and all the Mavic 3s have a giant battery in them. You have tons of room to fly, and you can get a second shot in there if you need to. So sometimes if there's something I want to get last second, in general, I like to have 2 batteries no matter what, so that the second one is charging in the car while I'm flying with the first one, and then I can swap them out. Active track is another thing that people really enjoy. It's never really been applicable in my filming situation, so I don't care. I do love to make hyperlapses though. The hyperlapse still delivers exactly like the Mavic 3 because, again, 20 megapixel, 12-bit raw photos, tons of room to edit these photos to make them look good. We do have these unique looking ND filters now, which are very cool. I'm grateful the exposure stopping isn't uniform because the big camera on the bottom needs a stronger ND filter than the smaller cameras. They all have different apertures, different default brightness, so they should be different. Thankfully, Philip Bloom specifically complained enough with them and then got Freewell to make some split ND filters. DJI decided to now adopt this formally, so all ND filters now are going to be the strength they should be. Then there's a new addition to the color profiles, Dlog-M. I've always had trouble grading the D-Log footage. It starts out like this, looking terrible. You add a DJI LUT and then you edit the rest of it. It works, it doesn't come out bad, but why do you go through all that if the normal profile is already so close? Well, this D-Log is 10-bit and the normal profile is only 8-bit, so it is more flexible and more accurate color. This new profile, Dlog-M, is kind of like a halfway point. So if you're unsure about doing that much color grading, it still gives you a flat picture to work with, but not as flat as the Mavic 3 D-Log we've had before. This is 10-bit footage with either of these log options. So that normal profile is 8-bit that you've seen from the Mavic 3 Pro. That's the one I have. I don't have the Cine version, so everything you've seen has been 8-bit. On the Cine version, the normal profile is 10-bit. That's how my Mavic 3 Cine is. Either way, I like to use the normal profile anyway. It's just hard to make it look ugly. Also, while we're here, you know how I keep mentioning the Mavic 3's exposure balancing? This is a ripe example. D-Log-M footage that I graded, and then Mavic 3 normal profile that I graded. Can you see it now? How the treatment on the foreground versus the sky is different. Normally, I avoid these kind of HDR things completely, like when they want to help you out, it never helps. But this camera is the only time I've come across it where I actually prefer it. Dlog-M is closer to the source material if you want an actually accurate picture, but if you like to fake it completely and make life less boring, then join me on the normal profile side of town. By the way, with the Mavic 3, I know what the exposure meter says. I don't really care. I've had better experience overexposing whatever the app is telling you to do. I'm like a stop overexposed here, and the color just came out better in the end, so that's my advice. That is just typically how log profiles work anyway. There is also HLG, which is like normal profile, but less contrasty if you want that. It also is 10-bit. However, the normal profile already exposure balances some, so it doesn't feel super different, honestly. This is, however, HDR footage. There's more data in it. If you right-click on it and check it out, normal footage shows up as Rec 709, and now we have Rec 2100. What a delightful treat. I hope they don't make another Mavic 3 because I'm at a point where I've been saying this enough. This is the business class ticket. Once you get a taste of that, the premium lifestyle, you can't go back to being a peasant. Once every, 6 years in cameraman world, you get a product that really feels like you're cheating because of just how well it performs. The Panasonic GH5, the camera that's filming this right now, was the last time I felt that way, where I thought, look, I can do anything. This thing is, I already feel rich using it. The Mavic 3 is the drone version of that, and I haven't had this feeling where like you're unsure going into something, shooting it, going, I know the preview is bad, it's going to stress the drone, like the sensor can't deal with all that. And it comes back, and it's like this Sistine Chapel painting, this like beautiful, well-balanced, like nice, rich, deep shadows, but not too dark. They really got it to a good point. So this is a drone no matter which version you buy. There might be a 9-camera version next, but I don't really care. As long as you get a Mavic 3, you're in the boat to get insane quality no matter what you're filming.